Welcome to Pro-Life Live, the program run by the students where we bring the experts and they bring the answers to discuss all things pro-life. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Pro-Life Live. I'm your host Michael and I'm joined tonight by Trent Horn. He's a Catholic apologist, pro-life advocate, and the author of Persuasive Pro-Life, How to Talk About Our Culture's Toughest Issue. Now, if you don't have this book, get it. Get this book right now. Stop what you're doing. Get this book. Read it. It's worth it. Every penny. So, Trent, how's it going, man?
It's going well. Sorry, I'm still trying to get the hang of Instagram. I just got an account like a few days ago.
Yeah. Well, welcome, man. Welcome to the deep end.
Oh, yeah.
You have a Twitter, right? Right, Trent?
I do, yeah. So you can just search Trent Horn, Catholic apologist. I mean, it's pretty easy. It's just Trent Horn on Twitter. So
okay. Well, you're not missing anything on Instagram, man. It's all pretty much mindless people, similar like Twitter. So
yeah, well, I found it helpful because I have a Facebook page, but it's not a private page. To have an Instagram account that's more of a personal account for people I know, because I used to only look at Facebook for pictures, and I guess that's why they made Instagram. So
yeah,
and why Facebook bought them. So, but yeah, no, it's a treat to be here. I'm happy to talk about the book and pro-life, and let's get to it.
Yeah. So, why are you pro-life?
Well, I'm pro-life because I believe that all human beings have an equal right to life and are equally valuable. I believe most fundamental principle of morality. We ought to do good and avoid evil. We're made in the image and likeness of God. And so the most fundamental principle would be to respect the lives of other human beings who are made in the image and likeness of God. And so I am pro-life for that reason, just a fundamental moral reason. But I'm also pro-life, if you mean in the activist sense, that I see a deep amount of tragedies in our world where life is not respected, where it is legal to kill human beings because they're unwanted. And I have devoted myself to educating others and helping them to defend those whose lives are in danger from being treated as if they're not persons. Yeah.
And speaking of activism, how did you first get started with the pro-life movement?
Right. So it's kind of funny, actually. When I was in high school, there was a girl who invited me to her prom. And she went to a very, very small Catholic school. There were only 20 people who went to this Catholic high school. So they all had to invite someone who didn't go to the school. So she picked me. Mm-hmm. And then through her, I met her father, who was the president of the State Right to Life organization. I had just become Catholic about a year earlier. And he sort of mentored me, if you will, took me under his wing and showed me what was going on with abortion and saw that I had a knack for speaking and teaching others. And it really took off from there that I felt compelled to want to make my voice known, to debate, to dialogue, and teach others to do the same. And then from there, I traveled to university campuses, the organization Justice for All, to dialogue with students on college campuses. And then I joined Catholic Answers in 2012, and in 2014, I published my pro-life book that you so graciously held up there, Persuasive Pro-Life.
Yeah. It's such, I can personally attest to this too. It's such a difficult thing to get into, the pro-life movement, whether you're either just pushed into it by a conversation some other people are talking about, or, you decide yourself to start, talking about it because, no one else is going to. So, what was that first encounter with abortion you had? That sort of made you want to actually, hey, I want to start talking about this myself?
Well, actually, my mentor, he loaned me pro-life books, and so I started reading those. And then one night he was reviewing a pro-life video that included a graphic depiction of abortion, of an actual abortion procedure taking place. And when I watched that, I was convicted that something had to be done, and that I had a calling to do that, and to do that in a gracious way, but in an effective way. And that's what I've tried to focus on for over 15 years now, of teaching people how to engage others on the issue of abortion, how to do it graciously and effectively, how to present arguments and evidences, but in a way that also reaches the deepest levels of the human person.
Yeah, yeah, and that's pretty interesting because I sort of came into it myself like that, watching a similar video to what you did.
Right.
And it's interesting that it's a hot take when it comes to abortion victim imagery.
Sure.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Hey, we can rap about that. I enjoy debates. I mean, I'm doing a debate here actually in 3 hours.
Oh,
On
really?
I
Hey,
am. Yeah, it's on Can a Catholic Be a Socialist? So
nice.
that'll be
Yeah.
streamed live on YouTube. So anyone listening to this now, if you want to catch that debate live, that'll be 3 hours from now. Otherwise, if you're watching this later, you can check it out on the Catholic Answers YouTube page.
Oh, yeah.
I like debates, and this is the use of abortion victim imagery. I like how you phrase it. He'll just call it graphic images.
Mm-hmm.
That I consider that an intramural pro-life debate that pro-lifers can reasonably disagree about its application. I've heard some pro-lifers try to make an argument that it's wrong or sinful to show pictures of aborted children, and I've actually addressed this online, and I believe that's flat out wrong. That if your purpose is to stop the killing of innocent human beings, and your point is to show this killing is happening to educate others, that is not evil in any way.
Yeah.
Now, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. So there's a wide range to talk about. Well, where's the best place to use abortion victim imagery? And I find that me personally, I like to use them. Context is very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a fan of abortion victim imagery just showing up in random places, for example, like random downtown areas where people are walking, where you lose the context and people aren't as receptive to the message because they're frankly outraged. So the two places that I find it helpful and I think worthwhile to use, and also I do believe there's one caveat about the moral thing.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it is immoral to recklessly show this imagery to young children.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we have a duty to protect children's innocence. Now, I put the caveat there that it's immoral to recklessly do it. Now, you may show stuff and children happen to see this. If it happens, it happens. Okay. But I mean, if you're just being, I think that's really problematic. Children have a right to their innocence. I know I have very small children myself. I haven't shown them this imagery and I won't show it to them for a long time, probably. So that's why in places I like to do it were abortion facilities. So outside abortion facilities, because you have context. People would get mad at me. Why do you have this sign? I would say because this is happening there. It's happening there right now.
Yeah.
And so that really drives home to them why I'm there. And there's usually a warning sign down the road so a parent can choose not drive that way. But even still, that would be an indirect showing to children, not something reckless. Not like I'm going to an elementary school or something. The other place that I like to do is with Justice for All, we would go to university campuses. And to me, a university campus is an appropriate place for these kinds of imageries because you're dealing with a lot of people who are likely to either get abortions or support abortion. There's very low chance of small children being there. It's a university campus.
Yeah.
And 3, universities are traditionally known as the marketplace of ideas. And so if there is a place where we ought to discuss a contentious issue, I can't think of anything more fitting than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really put it out really well in your book. About your book, with a ton of other pro-life books already out there, what made you want to write one yourself? What was out there that you think wasn't being descripted well enough?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember back when I was the Respect Life coordinator for the Diocese of Phoenix under Bishop Olmsted, who is still there, actually. I really appreciate his work. I was Respect Life coordinator, and they sent me, this is, probably back in like 2011. And they sent me to a conference with other Respect Life coordinators across the country. I think it was in Atlanta. And we were talking, and I asked, is there a good, solid pro-life book for Catholics to read to equip them to have conversations on these issues? Yeah. And there really wasn't. I mean, there were books that talked about the history of abortion and gave you the statistics, but not one that comprehensively told you how to argue your case as something that would be good for Catholics. So, for example, I know your group obviously might be diversified, and I love working with Catholics of pro-lifers with any theological stripe or no theological stripe, like secular pro-life. I love it. We all got to work together to do this. So that's why I had a good friendship and mentor through Scott Klusendorf, who is the author of the book, The Case for Life, Pro-Life 101 before that. And Scott and I, we're theologically, we're pretty far apart. He's a 5-point Calvinist. I'm a Catholic. But he even invited me to give the pro-life lecture. He was doing a talk at the G3 conference, which is a big Calvinist conference in Atlanta. And he said, Trent, I'd love to have you on. And I was there the night before debating James White on Protestantism and Catholicism.
Wow, nice.
But Scott said, hey, I'd love for you to come to my talk and we'll dual teach pro-life because we're totally on the same page. And I love Scott's book, The Case for Life. It's a great book, but I couldn't really recommend it to Catholics because it had a section on the gospel and abortion that actually had theological principles that were contradicting the Catholic faith. I don't fault Scott. He's a Calvinist. That's fine. But I wanted to have something that was in line, that was at least fine for Catholics to read, though I wrote the book for anybody to read, frankly. And that was comprehensive, easy to read, and it wouldn't just give you like, here's the facts, here's the bad news, like, here is how you talk about the issue. Here are the strategies that are involved with that. And to be really comprehensive, to answer both the common arguments and some of the tougher ones that show up. Though I wrote that back in 2014. I've thought about doing some kind of second edition soon or around the 50th commemoration of Roe v. Wade. So we'll see,
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. And, I know you mentioned in the book, which I really want to address, the question of why is abortion such a heated topic?
Sure.
Why can't I go to the office, stand by the water cooler and say, hey, so you guys pro-choice, pro-life? What's going on?
Because, and I put this on the book, is because the stakes are high and there's really no middle ground. There's really only two options here when it comes to abortion. Either the unborn are not human beings, and so pro-life advocates are oppressing women in a way that is possibly even worse than the oppression they dealt with when they were denied the right to vote and the right to work. So it would either be, severe oppression on women that damages not just their place in society, but even their very lives and health. Or it is the systematic killing of innocent human beings. So it's one or the other. And if you settle on which one is correct, you're going to have heated emotions against the other side that disagrees with you. This isn't like disagreeing about another public policy issue where we can have a prudential judgment, we can reasonably disagree, or where the stakes aren't that high. Should we have school vouchers for charter schools? You can have a discussion about it. You can even get a little heated, but it's nowhere. But you're not talking about that if one side wins, the other side's kids are going to be killed. It's not going to have the same emotions.
And, though it's really a very heated topic to talk about, don't you think, or would you say we should be talking about abortion a lot more than we are right now?
Well, we have to. The abortion, it's interesting when you look in nearly 50 years, the pro-life movement has kept a stalemate almost against abortion, which some people see as a defeat, but I see as kind of a small victory. That for 50 years, basically a quarter of the country is pro-abortion, a quarter is pro-life, and a quarter is pro-choice in the middle, and they only like the hard cases. They only say it should be legal in the hard cases, and it's been that way for nearly 50 years. And that's impressive given when you look at other social issues like so-called same-sex marriage or cultural acceptance of homosexuality. That has skyrocketed in 50 years, absolutely skyrocketed, and yet we've held the line. We've managed to hold the line against something because when it comes to abortion, it's not a fair fight. We have to actively work against people's base instincts, and abortion basically sells itself. You don't need a massive public media campaign to get people in favor of abortion. All you need is people having sex and desperately wanting a backup in case contraception fails or they forget or they don't use it. I mean, it sells itself, basically. People will naturally think of it and search it out when they're in this condition. And so they have a downhill fight, we have an uphill fight, but we were doing very well in that regard. If you look at that.
Yeah, and it's kind of nuts because, even on my own college campuses, and in high schools and in elementary schools, we're seeing that they're starting to bring in the topic of abortion, but not in the way where it's pretty much an open discussion, mainly in the sense of, hey, if this happens, go here, call this phone number.
Yeah, it should be a free and open debate. And that's what you'll need to realize, is that we're not going to change people's minds on abortion until we start having a bunch of conversations with them. And people see pro-life advocates and see the unborn and recognize them as human beings. I mean, that's how the so-called same-sex marriage movement made strides, as people had dinner table conversations and they met people who identify this way. And so having that emotional and personal connection is vital to move the cause of pro-life forward.
Yeah. And, moving into actually talking about abortion, what I wanted to do was to avoid straw manning at all the other side's position. I want to ask you, why are people pro-choice? I kind of want to steel man their position, before we can start talking about it, because I'm sure some people watching this, they're just going to, just make it really easy.
Well, sure. Well, sometimes when I do my debates, frankly, when I've done public abortion debates, I've been in positions where I could articulate the other side better than the guy I'm debating. When I see the hapless individuals. I mean, most people want abortion to be legal. Most people are pro-choice because they want the benefits of abortion and they don't care about the costs. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want just the straight up answer why most people are pro-choice, is they want the benefits related to abortion, and they don't care enough about the costs to want to get rid of the benefits, i.e. the ability to not be pregnant, no longer be pregnant, and the costs in human life and the costs to those who go through with an abortion. They don't see it as serious enough. Now, I could make an argument, if I was a steel man, the pro-choice position, I mean, easily the strongest pro-choice argument will be the one that grants the most premises to the pro-life advocate. So the strongest one will be the argument from bodily autonomy. And that would be the argument that the unborn are human beings with a right to life like you or I. However, their right to life does not include the right to use a woman's body. And so just as you have the right to refuse to donate an organ or bone marrow to save my life, a pregnant woman has the right to donate, her body to support the life of an unborn child. So if you have the right to refuse in that instance, then you could even make it stronger to say, if I know I'm going to get pregnant and have a child, and when they're 15, they're going to need my bone marrow, I'm responsible for that, but I still don't have to donate my body to care for this person. So to me, these bodily autonomy arguments are probably the strongest argument the other side will make when it comes to that issue. So, and as I point out in the book, however, if I were to quickly then refute it, this is an argument by analogy. And so these bodily autonomy arguments, we have to show the analogy is not the same as pregnancy for various reasons. And I would say the responsibility objection is the most common one. And most college students see the argument. They'll tell me this argument only works in cases of rape, not for most pregnancies that result from consensual sexual behavior. And it's not the same as saying that, oh, if I know I'm going to have a kid who needs my bone marrow in 15 years, I have to give it to them. No, in the case of pregnancy, you are responsible for the existence of someone who is needy by nature. If you are responsible for someone being in a needy position, who is needy by their very nature, is the kind of being that they are, then you owe them compensation. So one philosopher I've read, and this is also referenced in Scott's book, he puts it this way, imagine, the Star Trek, they have those replicator machines, and they can make food and all the other stuff you need on the Enterprise. It was wonderful. Suppose I built one of these, and you press the button, and 9 times out of 10, the replicator produces a bar of gold. Great, that's awesome. But one time out of 10, it produces a newborn infant. If I pushed it and this time it happens to be the infant, could I just walk away and say, well, I only intended for the bar of gold. I never intended for the infant. Or let's keep it with pregnancy, it's a bar of gold and an infant,
Yeah.
I only want the bar of gold, I'm leaving the baby now.
Yeah.
Well, no, because you engaged in an act that you knew was ordered towards the creation of a human being, a creation of a newly existing human being who's needy by their nature. And so you owe them support. You owe them care and support in that regard, and especially being the parent of that child. Because I would say, when people say, well, yeah, it's a human being with a right to life, but not a right to his mother's body. I'll say, okay, well, what does the right to life entail? Like for you and me, it's just, don't kill me. That's it.
Yeah.
Don't stab me, don't shoot me. But like for a newborn baby, the right to life of a newborn, if somebody leaves you and me alone, our right to life is respected. If you leave a baby alone, you violate the right to life, actually. So if we say that the fetus has a right to life, that includes the right to the one thing it needs to stay alive. The right to, by the way, something naturally ordered to keep this child alive. So it's not like me giving bone marrow to a child or you giving bone marrow to me. It's more like the right to an organ naturally suited for this human being, much the same as a newborn infant has a natural right to his mother's breasts to nurse, if that is the only sustenance that is available for that child. So that's what I would say about steel man. It is the toughest one is the bodily rights argument. It's funny, when I started doing a lot of heavy philosophy on this, the best book, it's probably honestly still the best pro-choice defense on this subject, is David Boonin's 2003 book, A Defense of Abortion. Though he's recently retooled it a bit. David and I actually debated at Stanford a few years ago. Only the audio of that debate exists, though, because Stanford wouldn't let us film it. Whatever. Really? Oh. Yeah, the audio is on YouTube. You can look up Trent Horn, David Boonin debate, and you can listen to it. I'd love to get in front of the cameras again with Professor Boonin and talk about his book. He has a new book out that, in defense of abortion, Boonin does two arguments. One argument is a fetus is not a person, and the other argument is even if it is a person, abortion is still acceptable. And then in his new book that he just published a year ago, he just does the bodily autonomy argument. He doesn't even bother to bring up the personhood argument. I think David knows that the personhood argument, trying to argue the unborn is not a person, it's impossible. It's impossible to argue the unborn is not a person and still retain the idea that infants are persons without some kind of ad hoc reasoning or special pleading. It just can't be done. It can't be done because there's no fundamental change in the ontology of a fetus when it is born. Only change undergoes is location and a different kind of nourishment. So there's no way to construct an argument that shows by a valid principle that a fetus becomes a person after the process of birth and is not a person before that. And now Boonin does his best effort to try to do that with early term fetuses and embryos, and other philosophers might try to say, well, late term's wrong, but the early term fetus and embryo are not persons. But it just doesn't work in the argument that he makes. Yeah.
And for those watching, what is a person? What
is
unborn? It's personhood.
You got to ask that question. When somebody tells you that the unborn is not a person, you need to ask them, okay, if you know it's not a person, then you have to know what a person is. If someone's confident that A is not a kind of X, they have to know what X is.
Yeah.
If I say that a rhombus, if I say a circle is not a quadrilateral,
right?
I have to know what a quadrilateral is. It's a four-sided shape. Because if I say a rhombus is not a quadrilateral, I don't know what I'm talking about. So you have to ask the person, well, what do you mean by the term person? And pro-lifers can fall into this too. I actually did a whole podcast on this recently for my podcast, The Counsel of Trent, Counsel. So I'd highly recommend your listeners go and check out Counsel of Trent on iTunes app. It's called The Problem of Personhood. And there's pro-lifers who say we shouldn't even talk about personhood. They're human beings. That's all that matters. Why do we have to talk about personhood? Well, because it's a valid argument. It's a valid philosophical construct. Because if your argument is you have a right to life just because you're a human being, well, what do you do then when the pro-choice philosopher says, well, what if we ever met an alien? Like, Superman. What if Superman came to Earth? When Doomsday kills Superman, wonderful graphic novel series. I highly recommend The Death of Superman.
Very.
Of course, no one's ever really dead, obviously. But when he kills Superman, or Lex Luthor tries to kill Superman, he violates Well, he basically kills Superman and All-Star Superman. He tricks him to fly towards the sun too closely, overdoses his cells of solar radiation. Lex Luthor, killing Superman, bad, evil. Why? Not
Yeah.
because Superman is a human. He's not. He's a Kryptonian. So what, then the pro-choicer will say, Superman and Yoda, and they're not humans. They're persons because they can think and speak like you or me. Fetuses can't think or speak. They're not persons. And then the pro-lifer will say they're just imaginary fictional characters. Well, the pro-lifer's got a problem. If you're a Christian pro-lifer, there are persons that are not humans, angels.
Yeah.
Christians believe in the existence of angels. They're persons, but they're not humans. So I would say, yeah, Yoda's a person. But guess what? Baby Yoda from The Mandalorian. Most people will say that being is a person, but seems to lack many person-like traits. I mean, people call it Baby Yoda. It's actually, the character is just called the child. But Baby Yoda has Baby Yoda has stuck. So there, I would say, look, let's say it is really Baby Yoda, even though it's not. That Yoda is a person, whether he's training Luke on Dagobah or whether he's Baby Yoda in The Mandalorian, because being a person means you're a kind of being. It means you are the kind of being who belongs to a rational kind. It's the only thing that makes sense of the fact that we believe all humans have equal value, even though we have unequal abilities. And we have that value throughout our entire life, and we maintain our same identity, even though our bodies change quite dramatically throughout the course of our existence.
Yeah. And, just with that argument there, for personhood, is there such thing as a strong or the strongest pro-life argument? Kind of like there's possibly the strongest pro-choice argument being bodily autonomy.
Oh, like what's the strongest pro-life argument?
Yeah.
It depends what you're going for. I mean, I still think the argument from the rational kind and the wrongness of killing members of a rational kind is the strongest. There's not a lot of different pro-life arguments out there. There are some that I believe that are bad, that we should not use. One argument is that abortion ought to be illegal because it hurts women. The problem is, I do agree that many women suffer physical negative effects from abortion and emotional and psychological negative effects from having abortions. There are women, though, who suffer negative physical and emotional effects from giving birth. Some women who give birth suffer from postpartum depression. So just because there are negative effects to something, unless it was dramatic and severe and widespread, that doesn't. Whoops! My screen was like. Is it getting dark? Am I dark, or is things just my screen? Whatever.
You're good.
Okay. Or my eyes are going, finally. So that argument that, we should point out the harms abortion does to women, and we should point out the unique harms and say, well, why is it such a unique harm to women? Why would women mourn abortion and mourn miscarriage? Well, because it involves the death of a human being. If that's a serious thing, then that should be illegal. So we should not focus on that as the reason abortion ought to be illegal. We should focus on that as the reason to ask serious questions about the nature of what abortion is. But when it comes to pro-life arguments, the rational kind argument I gave, I think, is probably the strongest. The other one would be Don Marquis's future like ours argument. So Marquis, I think I spoke to him a little bit when I was at University of Kansas. I think he taught there a while ago, at least, several years ago. Marquis, who is an agnostic, he's not Christian. He makes an argument that it doesn't even tackle the person element. So it's not about persons at all. Yeah. Marquis says, okay, fine, maybe we can't figure out what a person is, but Marquis asks the question in an opposite direction. Why is killing wrong? Why is it wrong to kill human beings and not kill? Most people believe that it's not wrong to kill cows and pigs, or at the least it's less wrong than killing human beings. I think even many vegetarians and vegans would say it's less wrong to kill a cow. It's more wrong to kill a human being. Yeah. Why is that? And Marquis proposes different reasons. It could be because we value our futures, or it could be because death causes us emotional anguish and psychological trauma and disrupts our plans for the future. The problem with that is it doesn't account for cases where you could be killed without psychological anguish, like painlessly in your sleep. It doesn't count for people who don't have plans for the future, like infants. Yeah. It doesn't explain people who don't value their futures. Like, for example, if I saw somebody jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, on average, one person commits suicide at the Golden Gate Bridge every 2 weeks. Very tragic. There's actually a good documentary about it called The Bridge, and they cover it. It's a dark documentary, I will say, so it's not for the faint of heart. It's called The Bridge. So let's say I'm there at the Golden Gate Bridge, and I see somebody jumping off the bridge. And I see them, and I see they have clearly intended to jump from that bridge, and so it's rational to conclude they do not want to live anymore. And so I think to myself, hey, very quickly, of course, hey, I would hate for this person to only be incapacitated in the water and die a slow death, an agonizing death by drowning. So I happen to have my rifle with me and a scope, and I'm going to shoot. And I am just I'm dead shot right here from DC. I'm going to hit them in the head, right through the medulla before they hit the water. Most people would say, and there I've given the killer the most a motive that is the most understandable to people. Some of them might say, I like killing, so whatever, this guy doesn't want to live anyways. Yeah. Most people would say that's wrong. Yeah. But under other accounts of what makes killing wrong, if this person didn't want to live anyways, who cares? Yeah. Marquis shows, no, what makes killing wrong of humans, and not like cows or pigs, but humans and infants, is merely because we have a future of valuable experiences, even if we don't presently value those things. We still have that future, and that future in and of itself is valuable. And so we ought to value it, and therefore it is wrong to kill human beings because they can have a future of valuable experiences like ours, and so we ought not kill them. Now, as I said, this is an argument Marquis makes. I think it covers the wrongness of a vast majority of abortions. You will be hard pressed that some people, the argument I don't think covers the wrongness of, for example, ending the life of a child who has anencephaly or a terminal condition where we know they will not have a valuable future like ours. And so Marquis's argument would not show the wrongness of those kinds of abortions, but it would show the wrongness of the vast majority of them.
Yeah, and I could definitely hear people bringing up like, well, okay, then why aren't you anti-war? And anti-violence,
And so for Marquis's argument, it would say that killing is wrong, all other things being equal, because we have valuable experiences. I don't think Marquis would say his argument means that it makes it absolutely wrong, but that it is wrong prima facie or on the face of it. So he could say that, well, the only time we're justified in killing is if we are protecting the lives of others who have valuable futures like ours. If it is necessary so that other people can have a future like ours, then it can be justified to kill in war, for example, in self-defense, and other things like that.
Yeah. So when it comes to just having a raw conversation with just anybody, what would you say is just pretty much a good start to someone who's new to just try to have an honest conversation rather than just throwing a one-liner, then walking away?
Oh, to have an honest conversation?
Yeah. What would you think, would be a good start?
Well, I think a question is a great start. And a good question you can ask is, do you think abortion should be legal for any reason during any stage of pregnancy? Most people will say no. They're not going to be okay with a trivial abortion the day before the baby's born, for example. And that puts you in a good position. Because now you can turn the question around, because when the person says some abortions are not okay or should be illegal, they're espousing a limited pro-life ethic. And so you can say, okay, well, why should it be illegal? And so now they're defending a pro-life view. And as they articulate these principles, you can show how they would apply to the vast majority of abortions.
Yeah. And, it's funny because usually when I see other people or myself go into a conversation about abortion, it's always trying to get around those very rare conditions that abortion is needed.
Mm-hmm.
Basically the hard cases for abortion.
Right.
And I just wanted to go over a couple of them with you.
Sure.
For example, like life of the mother. I hear this one brought up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say would be a good dwindle to that
Well, I would say when people bring up, what about the life of the mother?
one? Mm-hmm.
What I would say here is the unborn a human being? If the unborn is not a human being, it doesn't matter. Do whatever it takes to save a mother's life. Who cares?
Yeah.
If the unborn is a human being, then we have to ask the question, what do we do when we have two humans whose lives are in danger? What do we do? Well, we try to save both. And if we can't save both, we save who we can. And we don't directly kill one to save the other. My friend Stephanie Gray gives this analogy. If a lifeguard sees two people drowning and he swims out to one and saves one and he can't get to the other, he hasn't killed the other guy. He just was unable to save that guy. But if the lifeguard swims to one, then drags that person to the other and holds the first guy under the water as a flotation device and kills him, well, here you're killing one person to save another, and you can't do that. Mm-hmm. So you can, if a mother's life is in danger, I would say, look, if it's later in pregnancy, like if it is near viability or after viability, do an induced abortion. Do a emergency C-section. Because here it's going to be near the end of pregnancy. Even if you're around viability, are you giving the child at least a chance to live? It's going to be faster to do an emergency C-section than an abortion because you're basically inducing birth at this point in the third trimester. Yeah. But if it's early on, most common with like ectopic pregnancies, here what I would say is that you can remove the damaged section of the fallopian tube where the child is implanted. You're treating a pathology in the mother. You're getting rid of a damaged part of her body. And the child's death is not the means by it. It's just a regrettable, unintended, but foreseen effect of that process. And that's called the principle of double effect. So I think you can make that distinction, but you should also bring up, look, it depends. If you're dealing with an honest seeker, you can bring that up. But some people are just trying to score points. So you can say, well, look, what if the state made a deal where abortion is illegal unless the mother's life is in danger? Would you support a law like that? I would. Yeah. And then the other person says, no, I wouldn't. And say, well, then why did you bring this up in the first place? Right. Then that's not your real concern, is it? And then you can move the conversation along. Yeah. Yeah. Let's say, because I know people go all around and, they try to give you the loops, but, there are complications in trying to save the mother's life. And there's some terminal disease found in the child. The baby's going to die anyway. So, why not just... I would be careful of using the ethic. If person X is going to die anyways, it is acceptable to kill person X to save person Y's life. Because then you've opened the door to very, very grave consequences. So, for example, I could say, well, Bob needs a heart transplant, and Frank has a compatible heart, and Frank is dying of a terminal illness, and Frank will die probably in about 3 months or so. But Bob needs a heart now, or Frank's going to die in 6 months. 6 months is what they always say for terminal illness. Yeah. But Bob will be dead in 3 months if he doesn't get a new heart. So Frank's going to die anyways. Why shouldn't we kill Frank so that Bob can live another 20 or 30 years if Frank's going to die anyways? Well, we don't kill one person in order to save the life of another person. Now, when it comes to pregnancy, what I would say is you can attack the pathology, but not the child. So I would say, well, what is the thing that is killing the mother? So if you are administering, let's say she has uterine cancer, you can attack those cancer cells. You can use chemotherapy to attack those cancer cells. And if the child dies unintentionally from that, then that's not immoral. It's a proportional response. Just like if there are terrorists using human shields and they're destroying a country and they've hidden in a place and are using human shields, you can target those terrorists to keep them from killing others, even if civilians die as an unintended consequence. So when it comes to this issue, we should offer a sound ethical response, but then bring it back to the main issue, which is, look, if the unborn are human beings, all that shows is that in the case of the life of the mother, we're not sure what we should do, but in every other case, we do know what we should do.
Yeah, yeah. And recently, from what I've been hearing a lot from people, especially now that we have a pro-life president, you know, and the chances of abortion actually becoming illegal has arisen in conversations.
Right.
A lot of people are saying, you know, if abortion was illegal, should the mother be arrested? You know, and then they ask, what should her punishment be? You know, people are still going to have abortions, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, what should her punishment be, or should there be any, would you say?
Sure.
Yeah.
What I would just say to the people who make this objection is I would ask them, okay, I have a very simple question for you. Should parents be legally punished when they murder their own children? If parents directly bring about the death of their own child, should they be punished? Yes or no? And that's all I'll ask. And then the person's going to say, well, yes. And I'll say, how much? And I'll say, well, it depends. You know, if the parent took out a life insurance policy on the child and then killed the child in a premeditated way, they should probably go away for life. That's first degree. If the parent is emotionally distraught and, you know, shakes a baby in a crib and the baby dies, or, you know, is emotionally, it's not like necessarily a premeditated thing and they're not in the right state of mind, punishment is going to be different. The punishment for ending the life of a human being, it depends on the nature of the crime itself. And so I would say we can't answer this question until we answer the further question, which is, are the unborn human beings, do they deserve legal protection? And should it be, you just always go back to that one question. Should parents be held legally responsible for killing their children? And then I would say, does that principle change as the child gets younger? And then it's up to the person to defend why some children are protected under the law, but others are not. And I think what people, they're operating under this kind of intuition that, like, if somebody, they think to themselves, someone who would have an abortion doesn't deserve to go to jail for the rest of their life. They have this intuition. And so they think that if the unborn are human beings, they should go to jail for the rest of their life. Therefore, the unborn must not be human beings because they don't deserve this punishment. Yet notice that that is an illicit form of reasoning. All this argument proves is not that the unborn are not human beings. It just proves that one of the premises may be false, that killing one's child always results in life imprisonment or the death penalty. Yeah. Because then I might say, well, what about another kind of punishment? In fact, we don't have these laws in the US, but in the UK and other European countries, there are separate infanticide laws. And infanticide laws take into account the fact that the woman who commits infanticide is, generally speaking, not necessarily in the correct state of mind. It could be suffering from postpartum depression or is in dire straits. And that she is not a threat to the populace. She is not a threat to you or me or other children. She's a threat to her own offspring. And so the punishment is not as severe because she is not a threat to the community as a whole. The reason that we give, you know, severe punishments to police officers who kill people or, you know, serial killers is that they're a threat to society as a whole. We have to protect society. So when we look at that, there are, you know, the threat level and the circumstances involving, and there are infanticide laws where women are imprisoned or incarcerated for just, you know, a matter of years or a few years, or have mental health rehabilitation. And so what I would say is, well, if abortion is made illegal, we should just have similar feticide laws. Though but the thing is that to accord with those instincts. But there's another route I take also with this objection. How long should a woman go to jail for killing her unborn child? I ask the question, how long should a man go to jail if he kills a pregnant woman's unborn child? Say a guy says, I hate you and I hate your baby, and stabs a woman in the abdomen and kills her baby. And he does that. I would say, should that guy go to jail? Yeah. Or let's say it's not even like that kind of a malice. The guy just says, how about this? Let's say a girl, ask the person this question. Let's say the woman, this is based on a real story, actually. She wants to keep the baby, and the boyfriend mashes up abortion pills and puts it in her food and she miscarries.
Yeah.
Should he go to jail for killing a human being? A lot of people would say yes. Or the drunk driver who hits a car and the woman lives and the baby dies. Should he be punished? Should he go to jail? So then I ask, okay, why is the man punished in these cases but not the woman? Shouldn't we be treating the woman equally with the man? And then the person's in a quite difficult position on how to answer that.
Yeah. It totally turns into this, oh, okay, so it's unwanted versus a wanted, maybe.
Yeah, it's just wanted versus unwanted, and that women are held to a different standard than men.
Yeah.
Which is sexist.
100%. Yeah.
Which is sexist.
Yeah. No uterus.
Although now apparently you can have a uterus and not be a woman because the world we live in is crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I there's something you bring up in the book. You call them fighters. I want to talk about that because we're seeing a lot more fighters nowadays showing up on college campuses and the March for Life and such like that. So first of all, what are fighters? And then when talking about abortion, we're bound to run into these being rude encounters. How do you think what's the best way to deal with these situations, would you say?
Well, you have to remember Jesus said, don't throw your pearls before swine, lest they turn and trample you underfoot. Do not give that which is holy to dogs. Some people, you shake the dust from your feet. They're not worth having a conversation with at that moment because they're emotional. So you don't want to do that. So you might just say, maybe when you calm down a bit, we could have more of a even discussion. But I don't want to have I want to have a discussion, not a diatribe with you or me doing that. The other thing, but then when this comes up, you have people who are out to win and they don't want to have discourse. They use cheap bullying tactics and they yell and scream. And that's become more and more approved because we live in a society where elected officials who no one should have elected in the first place tolerate this behavior and let people get away with whatever they want if they just yell and scream about it. So what was once confined to college campuses is now kind of a mainstay in our culture, which I find to be highly regrettable. So when you're talking to these people, I recommend just try to keep your cool and let them embarrass themselves. If they're going to yell and scream, I wouldn't say anything, and then ask them very tough, pointed questions like, okay, help me understand your position. Are you saying it's okay to dismember a small human being in the womb because they're unwanted? Ask them tough, pointed questions that they can't wriggle their way out of. And then you let them blow off their steam and kind of embarrass themselves. And then later you can try to, and then pray for the person and pray for whatever hurt they are going through that's motivating this behavior. Pray for them and then try to engage them in a time when they're less volatile. But then also remembering that this may be an opportunity just to show that when I'm on Catholic Answers Live, I get people that are incoherent and are frankly rude sometimes. I use it as an opportunity to be kind and polite so that people will see the pro-life view as winsome and the pro-choice view is incoherent.
Yeah. And, this is a program for students, and we have a ton of students watching. So right now, what would you say to a student who's never been out there, who, they just trying to learn and, put themselves out there to help the pro-life? But what would you say to that person right now?
To best serve this cause, we need you to tolerate being bad at this until you get good at this. The children need you to do that. I have had to do that. I have had thousands of conversations, and it took quite a while to get a handle on how to have these conversations. It's like playing an instrument. You can read all the books you want on playing guitar, but you will not sound great at the guitar until you play the guitar, and you will sound bad at the guitar during the first few months you are playing it. That's how it goes. So you're not going to be Carlos Santana or, whoever right off the bat. You got to practice just like they did. So I would say to you, look, get out there, have the conversations, and at the very least, just say, all I'm going to do is ask this person questions about what they believe. If you just do that, what do you think about abortion? Why do you think that? Why do you think abortion should be legal here and this reason, but not this reason? You'll do a great service, and then point them to a pro-life resource where they can learn more. But you have to ask for the grace that is necessary to continue learning, and we're all learning I'm still learning how to have these conversations. To be able to do that one person at a time.
Yeah. And, before we go, I want to ask one more question.
Sure.
Batman versus Superman.
I actually covered this in an episode of Verses for my podcast, Counsel of Trent.
Yeah.
My Counsel of Trent podcast, there's a Who Would Win in a Fight episode you can go back through and watch or listen to. And in there, I talk about who would win, like a gorilla versus a grizzly bear. I put my money on the grizzly bear.
Wow.
That would be like who would win in a fight? A 120 pound, like 150 pound bodybuilder, or a 250 pound guy with knives on his hands. You always go with the bigger guy. I go through others, but one I do is classic Batman v Superman, and the answer is actually very simple. If it's just two guys in their underwear dropped in a parking lot, and they're trying to kill each other, Superman would destroy Batman in a second. Absolutely. If Batman has enough time to prepare, and the winning is just trying to disable the other person without killing them, and each person has time to prepare, Batman is going to win. Because the rule of comics is that Batman can defeat any opponent if he has time to prepare. And that has been true. He has taken on the new gods in the DC universe. He's taken on Darkseid. He's taken on Superman multiple times and has disabled him. So it is, but that's another. Now you revealed a hobby of mine that I do also enjoy comics and things that I talk about on my Free For All Fridays on my podcast, Counsel of Trent, if anyone's interested in listening to.
Yeah. And speaking of your podcast, Trent, is there anywhere people can find you, follow your work?
Sure. Yeah, I would recommend you can listen to my podcast. Just search Counsel of Trent, COUNSEL. You can support the podcast at TrentHornPodcast.com, and you can follow me on social media, and also my website is TrentHorn.com.
Awesome. Well, Trent, thanks, man. It's been a huge honor and pleasure, man, for having to sit down with you, man. Appreciate it.
I was happy to be here. Thank you so much.